Imagine that you are walking down the road of life, full of amazing opportunities and incredible events. But ahead of us all awaits one inevitable phenomenon, which we rarely think about, but which undoubtedly determines all our actions and choices. It is death. Does that sound grim? Perhaps. But what if I told you that it is the acceptance of the finality of life that can free you from so many fears, anxieties, and unnecessary worries? What if I told you that death is not an enemy, but the best teacher and wise counselor? Is it hard to believe? But those who have mastered this art have found true freedom and unshakable peace of mind. They have learned to live life to the fullest without wasting time on meaningless regrets and fears. In this video, we will take a journey through the philosophy of Stoicism, which will teach us how to embrace death and live with clarity and determination. Have you ever wondered how much the fear of death affects your life? Why do we fear the inevitable so much, and how it constrains our actions? Many of us try to ignore this fear, hide it deep inside ourselves, getting caught up in our daily worries and problems. But this does not free us. On the contrary, it reinforces its power over us. Today I will show you how Stoicism helps transform the fear of death into a powerful source of inner strength and confidence. You will learn how the sages of the past accepted death with dignity and serenity, and how their examples can inspire us in today's world, where there are so many distractions and frightening factors. This video will reveal to you a surprising truth: accepting death is the key to authentic life. A life without fear, without regrets, but with full awareness and gratitude for every moment. Stay tuned to the end, because what you hear today could change your life forever. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there are many more interesting and profound topics ahead that will help you unlock the potential of your soul and mind. So what is death, if not a natural part of our existence? We are accustomed to avoid this topic, to fear it as something unknown and frightening. But what if death is not the end, but just another beginning? Another step in the great cycle of life. Imagine that every morning is a new opportunity. Every moment is a chance to experience the world in its full glory, precisely because we know that one day it will all stop. This fear of death, which lives in the back of our minds, sometimes becomes our worst enemy. It holds us captive, preventing us from fully enjoying life, making us worry about the future and regret the past. But the Stoics argued that only when we can come face to face with our mortality can we find true freedom and begin to live truly. Stoics, such as Marcus Aurelius, taught us that each day should be lived as if it could be our last. This idea should not cause panic or fear. On the contrary, it frees us from unnecessary worries and petty concerns. After all, if we realize that every moment could be our last, we begin to appreciate it much more, making our lives rich and meaningful. Why are we so afraid of death? After all, it is a natural process that awaits each of us. There is nothing to this fear but our own thoughts, our own interpretation of it. The Stoics taught us that reality is neutral, only our perception makes it fearful or peaceful. When we change our attitude toward death, we find that it does not have over us the power we attribute to it. Death is the great equalizer. It comes to all, regardless of their status, wealth, wisdom, or power. This knowledge, paradoxically, can be a source of great comfort and peace of mind. After all, if death is inevitable, why not learn to face it with dignity, realizing that it is simply one step in our journey? Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should live in harmony with nature, accepting everything it gives us, including death. This acceptance helps us let go of our fear of the unknown and focus on what really matters. When we realize that death is simply part of the great cycle of life, we begin to appreciate the moments we have and try to live them to the best of our ability. We often try to avoid thinking about death, believing that it is something distant and inevitable. But the Stoics argued that thinking about death is not only a useful exercise, but necessary to learn to live fully. When we accept our mortality, we begin to appreciate life and all it gives us much more. Epictetus said that death is not evil, but a natural process that must be accepted. He taught his students not to fear death, but to prepare for it by living honorably and honestly. For the Stoics, death was not an enemy, but a teacher who showed them what was really important in life. Stoicism helps us to realize that death is not an end, but a transition. This knowledge enables us to look at life from a different perspective, not as something temporary and vulnerable, but as a unique opportunity that requires our full commitment and focus. Accepting death as inevitable frees us from the many fears and anxieties that prevent us from living life to the fullest. Many of us fear old age, believing that as we age we lose our significance and attractiveness. But the Stoics taught that with age comes wisdom, and accepting death as a natural process allows us to look at old age as an important stage of life that also brings its own rewards. Accepting the inevitability of death helps us face old age with dignity and inner peace. Reflecting on death helps us to focus on the present moment. For when we realize that our lives are not eternal, we begin to appreciate every day, every moment, every opportunity we have. This awareness makes our lives more rich and fulfilling, freeing us from the fear of what tomorrow holds. Stoicism teaches us to accept life as it is, with all its joys and difficulties, and death is an integral part of that equation. When we realize and accept our mortality, we begin to live more consciously, trying not to waste time on idle worries and anxieties. We realize that the most important thing is not how much time we have, but how we use it. Epictetus argued that what matters is not how long we live, but how we live our lives. This principle is at the heart of Stoic philosophy and reminds us that our task is to make every moment meaningful. Accepting death as the inevitable end of our journey helps us to live with greater clarity and purpose. Seneca wrote that life is long enough if we know how to manage it properly. These words remind us that time is our most precious resource and should not be wasted. When we accept death as an integral part of our lives, we begin to use our time with greater awareness, paying attention to what really matters. The Stoics taught that each person should accept their mortality as something natural, not resisting it, but accepting the fact with gratitude and understanding. This wisdom helps us to live without fear or regret, focusing on what makes our lives complete and meaningful. When we accept death, we stop fearing it and begin to live with greater determination and confidence. We no longer put our dreams on hold, realizing that we only have the present moment. This knowledge gives us the strength and motivation to achieve our goals and realize our desires. Accepting death teaches us to be prepared for any trials and twists of fate. When we know that the end is inevitable, we begin to appreciate every step along the way. We no longer waste time on idle fears and worries, but focus instead on what really matters. Epictetus reminded his students that death is not the end, but merely a transition to another state. This knowledge helps us to look at life from a different perspective, not as a series of random events, but as a path we must walk with dignity and honor. Accepting death teaches us to be honest with ourselves. We stop avoiding unpleasant thoughts and begin to look at life with greater awareness. It helps us make important decisions that make our lives more complete and meaningful. Stoicism teaches us to approach life with acceptance rather than resistance. When we accept death as inevitable, we are freed from the many fears and anxieties that prevent us from living life to the fullest. This leads to a deep sense of inner peace and fulfillment. When we stop fearing death, we begin to live with greater confidence and determination. We no longer waste our energy on empty fears and regrets, but focus on what makes our lives full and meaningful. So friends, what can we learn from these reflections? We live in a world where fear of death drives many of us. But today we have learned that this fear can be transformed into a source of strength and inspiration. Accepting death frees us from unnecessary anxiety and allows us to live life to the fullest, to live with clarity and determination without being distracted by empty fears and regrets. Stoicism teaches us to appreciate every moment, to be grateful for what we have, and not to fear what is inevitable. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about Stoicism and other philosophical and psychological topics, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Here we share not only the wisdom of the past, but also practical advice that will help you improve your life today. Don't forget to put a like if this video was useful for you, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about accepting death? How do you deal with fears and anxieties? Your comments and support help us to create more and more interesting and useful content. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned. There are many more topics to come to help you unlock the potential of your soul and mind. Life is short, and every moment is precious. Let's live it consciously and with gratitude.